We begged Earth for help when time ran out, and I saw the response fall from the heavens. The sky over Violia was a dull red, streaked with smoke from burning cities. Ethan Miller gripped the controls of his small fighter ship, eyes fixed on the horizon. Below him, the last remnants of the capital city were in flames, and the streets were crowded with people running from destruction. The Kryn war machines moved like dark shadows, cutting through the weak defenses of the humans on the surface. Ethan's ship shook as a laser blast from a Kryn drone struck nearby. He twisted the controls and narrowly avoided the next shot. Come on," he muttered under his breath. Every second counted, every second mattered. Beside him, Clara Johnson adjusted the sensors on their ship. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, checking energy levels and scanning for enemy positions. "Ethan," she said, her voice tight with urgency, "we can't hold them much longer." "There are hundreds more coming from the orbiting ships." Ethan nodded grimly. "I know, but we have to buy time. We have to keep the civilians alive at least a little longer." Clara's eyes flicked to the ground below. Families were running through the crumbling streets, carrying what little they could save. Children clung to their parents' hands, crying in fear. Smoke filled the air, and a harsh wind carried dust and ash across the streets. It smelled of fire and metal. Ethan and Clara were part of the last defense unit on Violia. Most of the planet's military had already been destroyed. The Kryn were ruthless, moving from city to city with precision and power. Their ships were fast, their weapons deadly, and their numbers overwhelming. Still, the humans fought back. They fought with courage, even if the outcome seemed hopeless. On the ground, soldiers fired their old energy rifles at the advancing Kryn troops. The weapons sparked and hummed, barely scratching the enemy. Ethan watched from above as a group of Kryn soldiers pushed forward, tearing apart barricades and sending humans fleeing. "Clara," Ethan said, his voice low, "we need a plan. We can't keep doing hit and run forever." Clara frowned. "I've been working on something. Maybe if we can reach the main Kryn ship in orbit, we could disrupt their control systems. It might give the ground units a chance." Ethan hesitated. "That's in orbit. That's hundreds of kilometers above the surface, and those ships are huge." "How do you plan to get close without being destroyed instantly?" Clara's eyes burned with determination. "We don't have a choice. If we don't try, everyone dies. I've been scanning the enemy patterns. There's a weak point in their shield formation, but it only opens for a few seconds every cycle. We could make it if we act fast." Ethan swallowed hard. The idea was dangerous, almost suicidal. But looking at the burning city and the terrified people, he knew there was no other choice. "All right," he said. "We'll try, but we do this together." The two of them flew closer to the orbital line, weaving between enemy drones and laser blasts. Their small fighter ship was fast and agile, but every movement was critical. One wrong turn, one missed calculation, and they would be destroyed instantly. Below, the ground fight continued. Soldiers and civilians ran toward makeshift shelters, trying to survive as buildings collapsed around them. Ethan glanced down and saw a child crying in the rubble. He wanted to reach them to help, but there was nothing he could do from his position in the air. All he could do was hope that Clara's plan would work. After several tense minutes, they reached the point where the Kryn shields were weakest. Clara adjusted the navigation system, and the ship dove forward at high speed. Laser blasts streaked past them, and the ship shook violently as they entered the orbital defense zone. "We're in," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hold steady." Ethan focused on the controls. The enemy fire was heavy, but the timing was right. He guided the ship toward the core of the Kryn command ship, where Clara hoped to disrupt the systems. Every second felt like an hour, and the hum of the engines was the only sound in the cockpit aside from Clara's quiet calculations. Suddenly, an alarm blared. "They've detected us," Clara shouted. Red lights flashed across the control panel. Shields were up, but not fully. The Kryn fire intensified, and Ethan's ship shook as it took several hits. "Hold on," Ethan yelled, pushing the ship to its limits. They dodged and weaved, narrowly avoiding destruction. Clara's fingers flew over the controls, sending commands to the ship's hacking systems. They were close now. Then a sudden explosion rocked the ship. Ethan was thrown against his harness, and Clara's console sparked. Smoke filled the cockpit. "Clara, are you okay?" he shouted. "I'm fine," she gasped, coughing. "Just keep flying." They broke through the last layer of defenses and reached the core systems of the Kryn ship. Clara initiated her sequence, sending pulses of energy to disrupt the enemy controls. The shields flickered and the enemy fleet faltered. "Yes," Clara shouted. "It's working." Below, the ground forces noticed the change. The Kryn troops hesitated, confused as their command signals weakened. Humans on the surface cheered quietly, hiding behind walls and debris, realizing that they had a chance. But the victory was temporary. Another wave of Kryn ships entered the orbit, larger and more powerful than the last. Ethan and Clara's ship was battered and smoking. "We can't hold them off alone," Ethan said. "We need more help. We need Earth." Clara's eyes widened. "You mean send a distress call?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, we have to. It's the only chance we have left. If Earth doesn't respond, everyone dies." Clara activated the long-range transmitter, sending a detailed message to the distant human homeworld. She described the Kryn fleet, the destruction on Violia, and the desperate need for help. "Please, send help," she whispered, as the message was transmitted across light years of space. As the message left Violia, Ethan looked down at the city below. Smoke and fire filled the streets, but the people were still fighting, still trying to survive. He thought of the families, the children, the soldiers who had given their lives for a chance at survival. He thought of Clara, who had risked everything to reach the Kryn ship, and he felt a surge of hope. But that hope was fragile. The Kryn were relentless, and their orbital fleet was closing in fast. Ethan's ship shook again as another blast hit the hull. Warning lights flashed, and the engines sputtered. "We can't hold them much longer," Clara said, her voice tight. "We have to get back to the surface." Ethan nodded. He guided the ship down through the orbiting ships, weaving between laser fire. The city below looked smaller now, but the devastation was clear. Buildings were gone, streets were rubble, and fires burned across the horizon. People were running, screaming, and crying. As they approached a safe landing zone, Ethan saw a group of civilians trapped under a collapsed building. Without thinking, he maneuvered the ship closer, hovering above them. Clara looked at him in alarm. "Ethan, you'll be shot down." "I can't leave them," Ethan said. "Not when they need us." He lowered a small rescue pod and activated the lift system. The civilians climbed in, shaking and terrified. A mother held her child tightly, tears streaming down her face. Ethan felt a pang of sorrow and anger. This war, this destruction, it was all wrong. Yet here they were, surviving against impossible odds. Once the civilians were safe, Ethan guided the ship back to the main shelter zone. The soldiers there cheered, relieved to see survivors. Clara exhaled deeply, checking the systems again. "That was too close," she said. "We barely made it." Ethan shook his head. "This isn't over. The Kryn will keep coming, and now we wait." They landed the ship, and the survivors were taken to shelters. Ethan and Clara stood together, looking at the burning city. The smell of smoke was strong, and ash fell like snow around them. The destruction was overwhelming, but the people were still alive, still fighting. Clara turned to Ethan. "Do you think Earth will respond?" Ethan looked up at the distant stars. "I hope so," he said. "We don't have much time. If they don't come, we're done." Above them, the Kryn fleet hovered, ready to strike again. Below, the people of Violia huddled together, waiting for a miracle. Ethan clenched his fists, determination burning in his heart. They had fought for survival this long. They would fight until the end. As night fell on the ruined city, Ethan and Clara prepared for the next wave. The message to Earth had been sent. Now all they could do was wait. And hope, somewhere across the stars, the humans on Earth would see their plea. And maybe, just maybe, help was on the way. The sky glowed faintly with distant explosions, and the cries of the survivors echoed through the ruins. Time was running out. But in the hearts of Ethan, Clara, and the people of Violia, hope still lived. And as they looked up at the heavens, they prayed that someone was listening. The message from Violia traveled across the vast emptiness of space. It moved faster than any human could fly, faster than any ship could chase. On Earth, the transmission reached a command center deep underground. Screens flickered with images of a burning world and the desperate faces of humans fighting for survival. Nathan Brooks, a seasoned commander, leaned over the table, studying the data. His gray hair was streaked with stress, and his eyes were tired from endless decisions. "This is worse than we imagined," he said, voice low. "They're not just losing a fight. The planet is about to be destroyed." Lucy Parker, a young communications officer, sat beside him. Her fingers tapped the keyboard quickly as she analyzed the incoming signals. "They sent coordinates and detailed enemy patterns," she said. They even included a message from a scientist, Clara Johnson, about a weak point in the enemy shields. It's precise, Nathan. They want us to help, and they've given us the information to do it. Nathan rubbed his chin. We've never sent a fleet this far. Violia is light years away. Even with jump technology, this mission is risky. If we fail, we lose more than just a planet. We could start a war with the Kryn across the galaxy. Lucy shook her head. We can't wait. If we don't act, millions will die. They're counting on us. Nathan looked at the images of families trapped under rubble, children crying, cities burning. Something in him tightened. You're right, he said finally. We don't have a choice. Prepare the Artemis fleet. We leave as soon as possible. The command center erupted in activity. Orders were shouted, ships were fueled, and weapons were checked. Across the docking bays, engineers hurried to finish the last repairs on the starships. The Artemis fleet was made of the most advanced ships Earth had ever built. They had adaptive shields, energy weapons far stronger than anything the Kryn had seen before, and engines that could jump through light years in a matter of days. Meanwhile, on Violia, Ethan Miller and Clara Johnson watched the skies. They had no way of knowing if anyone would come. Their city was still burning, and the Kryn troops continued their relentless advance. Soldiers and civilians hid in makeshift shelters, exhausted and frightened. Alex Reed, a young pilot, came running toward them. Ethan, Clara. The message has been received, he shouted. They said they're sending help. Ethan felt a spark of hope. Help, he repeated, almost unable to believe it. They're actually coming, Alex nodded. Yes, they're preparing the Artemis fleet right now. They'll arrive as fast as they can. Clara's eyes lit up. Then we might actually survive, she said softly. She turned back to her console and began analyzing the Kryn fleet again. We still have to hold them off until they arrive. We can't let our hope fade before they reach us. Days passed on Violia, though time felt strange in the chaos. The Kryn launched wave after wave of attacks. Their ships were fast and deadly, their ground forces brutal. Ethan and Alex flew missions in their fighters, striking Kryn patrols and rescuing civilians. Each mission was dangerous and losses were heavy, but every small victory kept the people's spirits alive. On Earth, Nathan and Lucy studied the transmissions from Violia. They worked tirelessly to understand the Kryn weapons, the planet's geography, and the best way to strike without causing even more damage. They mapped the enemy fleet and planned routes that would maximize the Artemis fleet's advantage. Nathan walked along the docking bays, observing the preparations. We need every pilot ready, he said. This mission is more than just a rescue. We have to protect Violia and teach the Kryn a lesson they'll never forget. Lucy followed him, her face serious. Nathan, what if they're too far gone? What if we arrive too late? Nathan stopped and looked at her. Then we fight anyway. Humans never give up. We don't leave anyone behind. Not on Earth, not on Violia. That's who we are. Meanwhile, the citizens of Violia tried to survive. They hid in tunnels in the ruins of buildings and wherever they could find shelter. Families huddled together, sharing food and water. Children asked questions about what was happening, and parents struggled to answer. Ethan flew above the city, scanning for Kryn patrols. His ship was battered and he was exhausted. Still, he pushed on. He could see the fear in the people's eyes, the desperation. He had to keep them safe. Clara worked below, adjusting the city's weak defense grid. Her hands moved over the panels with precision, rerouting power and creating temporary shields. We can slow them down, she said to Ethan over the comms, but only for a little while. Ethan gritted his teeth. Then we make that little while count. Alex returned from another mission, his ship smoking from a near miss. Ethan, the Kryn are changing their tactics, he said. They're learning from us. They're not just attacking. They're trying to trap civilians and cut off escape routes. Ethan nodded. We'll adapt too. We always do. He turned toward the sky, thinking about Earth. They had sent the message. They had no way of knowing if help would arrive in time, but the idea that humans from another world were coming gave him strength. Back on Earth, the Artemis fleet was ready. Ships lined the docking bays, engines glowing faintly. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers boarded quickly, checking weapons, shields, and navigation systems. The fleet commander, Nathan, stood at the front, giving instructions. Remember, he said, we are not just fighting for Violia, we are fighting for all humans everywhere. We protect life. We fight with honor. We are the Artemis fleet, and we do not fail. Lucy Parker worked beside him, monitoring transmissions from Violia. The last messages were faint but clear. Hope was alive, but time was short. "They're counting on us," she said softly. The jump engines engaged and the Artemis fleet disappeared into the stars. In a flash, they were moving faster than light, leaving Earth behind, racing across space toward a burning world. On Vierlia, Ethan, Clara, and Alex prepared for another wave of attacks. Soldiers manned barricades, civilians hid in shelters, and the Kryn continued their assault. Explosions shook the ground and smoke filled the air. "We can't do this alone," Clara said, watching the enemy forces approach. "We need help, we need Earth." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's coming, they'll be here, we just have to survive a little longer." Alex nodded. "And we will. We always find a way." The hours passed slowly. Every explosion, every cry of the wounded reminded them that time was running out. The Kryn were relentless and the city was falling apart. Yet in the midst of destruction, a spark of hope remained. High above in the stars, the Artemis fleet moved closer. Its engines glowed like a promise, a beacon for the people of Vierlia. Somewhere in the endless darkness of space, humans from Earth were coming to answer the desperate plea of a dying world. Ethan flew over the city again, scanning for survivors. He saw families huddled together, soldiers struggling to hold back the Kryn and the occasional small victory, a Kryn patrol destroyed, a group of civilians saved. Clara worked tirelessly in the command center. Her hands were sore, her eyes tired, but she did not stop. She rerouted energy, calculated defenses, and monitored enemy movements. "We can slow them," she said again, "but only a little." Alex joined Ethan in the air. "We can't let them break through," he said. "Not yet." "Not until help arrives," Ethan nodded. "Then we fight with everything we have." The Kryn forces pressed on, attacking from all sides. Buildings collapsed under heavy fire and screams echoed through the streets. Yet even as hope seemed to fade, the humans did not give up. Soldiers and civilians alike worked together, finding clever ways to survive. Clara checked the sensors one last time. "Earth is close," she said. "They'll be here soon." Ethan looked up at the sky. "We'll be ready." "We have to be." The horizon glowed faintly as the first ships from the Artemis fleet appeared. Small points of light at first, then larger, more defined shapes. The humans of Vierlia looked up and saw them, shining like stars falling from the heavens. For the first time in days, a sense of relief swept through the survivors. Hope was alive. The fight was not over, but they were no longer alone. Ethan, Clara, and Alex prepared for the final struggle, knowing that survival depended on every second. The Kryn would not give up easily, but now, with Earth coming, they had a chance. And somewhere in the command center of the Artemis fleet, Nathan Brooks and Lucy Parker watched the transmission from Vierlia, knowing that the time for action had arrived. The humans from Earth were on their way, and the battle for Vierlia was about to reach a new, decisive stage. The sky over Vierlia was dark with smoke and fire. The Kryn had pushed the humans to the brink. Cities lay in ruins, and the streets were filled with rubble and terrified survivors. Ethan Miller flew low above the ground in his fighter, scanning for enemy patrols. His ship was battered from countless skirmishes, but he refused to give up. Clara Johnson worked in the underground command center. Her fingers moved quickly over the panels, adjusting energy flows and rerouting shields to protect the remaining shelters. "Ethan," she said over the comm, "we can't hold them much longer. The Kryn are adapting to our tactics. Every wave is stronger than the last." Ethan gritted his teeth. "I know, but Earth is coming. They promised help. We just have to hold out a little longer." Alex Reed, another pilot, joined him in the skies. "I've spotted more Kryn reinforcements," he said. "They're moving faster this time, and their drones are smarter. We need to slow them down." Ethan nodded. "Then we fight smarter. We use what we know. We use the city." Below, the streets of Vierlia were a maze of fire and ruins. Civilians hid where they could, while the few remaining soldiers tried to hold back the Kryn. Makeshift barricades were smashed, and buildings crumbled under energy blasts. Yet in the chaos, the humans were still clever. They set traps, created ambushes, and used the environment to their advantage. Even with weak weapons, their ingenuity caused unexpected damage to the enemy. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the sky. At first, it was only a small point far away, but it grew larger, brighter, and more defined. Humans on the ground stopped in shock and stared. The light moved with purpose, and soon the shape of massive starships became clear. The Artemis fleet had arrived. Ethan's eyes widened. "Clara, look!" he shouted. Clara turned to the display. Her heart raced as she saw the fleet descending. "It's them," she said softly. "They came." The Kryn paused, noticing the new ships. They hesitated for the first time in days. Their orbital command ships struggled to respond to the sudden threat. The humans of Vyrlia looked up, hope igniting in their hearts. Families who had been hiding came out cautiously, staring at the shining fleet above. Nathan Brooks, commanding from the lead ship, observed the planet below. "Lock formation," he ordered. "We go in slow, protect civilians, neutralize Kryn ships, and hold the ground units as long as we can. Focus fire on the largest threats first." Lucy Parker worked beside him, monitoring communications. "The surface units are ready," she said. "Ethan, Clara, can you coordinate with us?" Ethan grabbed the comm. "Yes, we're ready. The Kryn are strong, but they're about to meet their match." The Artemis fleet moved like a shining wave across the sky. Their energy weapons fired with precision, destroying Kryn drones and warships in orbit. Explosions lit the darkness, and the humans on Vyrlia cheered quietly, hiding behind rubble but filled with hope. Alex maneuvered his fighter, coordinating with Ethan. "We hit the weak points Clara found," he said. "Target the shields and the command ships. If we disrupt them, the rest will fall apart." Ethan nodded. "On it." He dodged a Kryn laser blast and fired at a drone. The enemy ship exploded in a ball of fire. Below, civilians and soldiers watched as their enemies faltered for the first time. Clara continued her work in the command center. "The Artemis fleet is engaging," she said. "We need to protect the shelters. I'll extend the temporary shield dome over the city's center. It won't last long, but it will save lives." Energy flowed through the dome, creating a shimmering barrier that protected civilians. Children peeked through the walls, amazed by the sight of humans from another world fighting in their sky. Ethan led Alex and a small group of pilots on a daring mission. They flew into the heart of the Kryn formation, dodging heavy fire and using the ruined city below as cover. Explosions rocked the ground as the Kryn tried to shoot them down, but human pilots were clever and relentless. "Keep moving," Ethan shouted. "We can't let them trap us." Alex gritted his teeth. "Almost there, just a little farther." They reached the Kryn command ship and opened fire on its core systems, just as Clara had calculated. Sparks flew from the hull, shields flickered, and the Kryn ships faltered. Human ingenuity and precision had found its mark. On the ground, soldiers took advantage of the confusion. They launched counterattacks, pushing back Kryn forces. Civilians joined in where they could, throwing explosives or using debris to block the enemy. Every small act of courage added up. Clara checked the shield dome. "It's holding," she said. "For now, but the Kryn are regrouping. We need the fleet to finish this quickly." Above, Nathan Brooks coordinated the Artemis fleet with unmatched skill. Ships moved in formation, targeting Kryn vessels while avoiding friendly fire. Energy beams lit the sky and explosions shook the ground. The Kryn tried to adapt, but human tactics were unpredictable and smart. Ethan and Alex continued their attack, dodging blasts and firing at weak points. "We're making progress," Ethan shouted. "They're retreating." Clara smiled, feeling hope for the first time in days. "We can do this," she said. "We can survive." The Kryn tried a desperate strike at the city's center, hoping to destroy the shelters. Ethan reacted instantly, diving into the path of the attack. His fighters' lasers tore through the enemy drones, protecting the civilians below. "Good job," Alex said. "Keep it up." The Artemis fleet intensified their attack. Nathan directed fire to the largest Kryn ships, while smaller vessels supported Ethan and the ground units. The humans moved as one, coordinated and precise. The Kryn were confused. Their shields failed, their drones were destroyed, and their command ships were damaged. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Humans were clever, adaptive, and fearless. Ethan looked down at the streets. Families were coming out from shelters, helping soldiers clear debris and rescue the wounded. Children cheered quietly, inspired by the fleet above. Clara's fingers flew over the controls. "We can push them back completely," she said. "If we combine the shield dome with precise strikes, we can save most of the city," Ethan grinned. "Then let's do it." He led a final strike into the Kryn formation. Alex followed, firing at the remaining enemy ships. Explosions lit the sky, smoke rising into the dark clouds above. The Kryn command ships faltered, then began to retreat. Humans on Vyrlia cheered, their voices mixing with the hum of distant engines. On the ground, soldiers and civilians worked together to secure the city. Fires were still burning, but people were alive. Children hugged their parents and families reunited after days of terror. Ethan landed his fighter near the command center. Clara ran to him. "We did it," she said, her voice trembling. "They're retreating." The fleet saved us." Ethan smiled, exhausted but relieved. "We held out, we survived, and Earth kept their promise." Alex joined them, wiping sweat from his brow. "I never thought we'd see this day," he said. "I thought it was the end." Clara shook her head. "It's not the end. It's a beginning. We have to rebuild to prepare in case they return. But today, we won." Ethan looked up at the Artemis fleet hovering in the sky. The ships glowed like falling stars, a reminder of hope and human strength. "We begged Earth for help when time ran out," he said softly, "and I saw the response fall from the heavens." On the streets of Violia, survivors gathered to look at the shining ships above. They had witnessed human courage and ingenuity, not just from their own people, but from humans from another world. Hope burned brighter than any fire. Clara turned to Ethan. "We survived this, but we can't be careless. The Kryn may come back." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll be ready. Today proves that humans are never beaten. We fight, we survive, and we adapt. That's who we are." Alex smiled. "And we have friends across the stars who will help us. We are not alone." Above, the Artemis fleet slowly ascended, ready to leave, but leaving behind a message of hope. Humans from Earth had answered a desperate call. Violia was battered but alive. And its people had learned something important. Even in the darkest moments, human courage and ingenuity could turn the tide. Ethan, Clara, and Alex watched the fleet depart, knowing that their world would rebuild. Soldiers helped civilians, children laughed for the first time in days, and families hugged tightly. The Kryn were gone, for now, but humanity had proven its worth. Against overwhelming odds, against a superior enemy, humans had survived and thrived. Ethan looked at the sky, the glowing ship slowly disappearing into the distance. "We survived," he said again, "and we will survive again if we must." Clara smiled softly. "Because we fight, because we never give up." And in that moment, on a world that had almost been lost, humans stood tall, proud, and victorious. The sky over Violia was alive with the glow of human ships. The Artemis fleet hovered above, its energy shields shimmering and laser weapons ready. Ethan Miller, Clara Johnson, and Alex Reed stood on the edge of the central command center, watching the horizon. The Kryn were not gone completely. Their retreat had been temporary, and reports showed that a new fleet was forming beyond the planet. Clara adjusted the sensors. "Nathan says the Kryn are regrouping," she said. "They're planning a final strike. If we don't stop them now, Violia could still be destroyed." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we end this, today." He looked down at the city. Fires still burned and rubble covered the streets, but people were emerging from shelters. Soldiers checked barricades and civilians helped wherever they could. The city was battered but alive. Alex adjusted his fighter. "We hit their command ship first," he said. "Clara, can you guide us through the weak points again?" Clara nodded. "I've recalculated the shield patterns. There's a small window, less than 10 seconds, but if we coordinate with the fleet, we can disable their core systems." Ethan took a deep breath. "Then we coordinate." "Everyone get ready." Across the city, soldiers and civilians prepared. Families moved to safer zones, and children watched in awe as the shining ships of Earth hovered above their heads. Hope had returned. The Kryn command ship appeared on the horizon, massive and dark against the sky. Smaller Kryn vessels accompanied it, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. But the humans were ready. The Artemis fleet moved in formation, engines blazing, weapons aimed, shields raised. Nathan Brooks, commanding from the lead ship, gave his orders clearly. "Focus fire on the command ship and the largest warships. Protect civilians at all costs. Pilots follow Ethan and Alex's lead. Ground units maintain defensive positions. This is our final strike." Lucy Parker monitored communications with Violia's command center. "Ethan, Clara, can you give the fleet precise coordinates for the weak points?" Clara nodded. "Coordinates ready. Synchronize with the jump engines. Timing is critical. One mistake and we lose everything." Ethan and Alex led their fighters toward the Kryn formation. Laser fire exploded around them as enemy drones tried to intercept. Ethan dodged a blast and fired at a Kryn vessel, watching it disintegrate in flames. "Keep moving," Ethan shouted. "We're almost there." The Kryn command ship's shields flickered as the Artemis fleet fired at their weak points. Explosions rocked the ship and sparks flew from its hull. The humans were relentless, precise, and coordinated. Clara guided the fighters, her voice calm but firm. 10 seconds to align. Fire on my mark. Ethan and Alex maneuvered into position. Their hearts pounded, but their hands were steady. The Kryn fired desperately, but their attacks were slower, less effective against the humans' speed and strategy. Now, Clara shouted. Energy beams from the Artemis fleet and the fighters hit the weak points simultaneously. The Kryn command ship shuddered violently, its shields collapsing. Sparks and smoke poured from the hull. The smaller Kryn vessels faltered, unable to maintain formation without guidance. On the ground, humans watched in amazement as the Kryn fleet began to break apart. Soldiers launched final counterattacks, striking the remaining drones and troops. Civilians helped clear rubble and rescued those still trapped. The city's center was still damaged, but alive. Ethan fired one last burst at a Kryn vessel trying to escape. It exploded in a brilliant flash, scattering debris across the sky. Alex followed, taking out another vessel. "That's it," he shouted. "They're retreating for good." Clara exhaled, relief washing over her. "It's over, at least for now." Nathan Brooks gave the order. "Stand down, fleet. Focus on stabilizing the city and ensuring civilians are safe." Lucy Parker monitored transmissions from Virelia. "Civilians are coming out from shelters. Soldiers are regrouping." They survived the final strike. Ethan landed his fighter near the command center. Clara and Alex followed. The streets were filled with humans cheering quietly. Children ran to their parents, families embraced, and soldiers shook hands with each other. The city was battered but alive. Clara walked among the people, helping those in need. She guided families to safer zones and helped soldiers organize emergency repairs. "We'll rebuild," she said to a small group of survivors. "It will take time, but we can do it." Ethan moved through the streets as well, helping wherever he could. He guided soldiers, checked barricades, and helped rescue a few families trapped under debris. Everywhere he looked, humans were working together, their courage shining brighter than any weapon. Alex joined him. "I never thought we'd see this," he said. "I thought Virelia was lost." Ethan smiled, though he was tired. "We weren't alone. Earth came. Humans always find a way. That's who we are." Above, the Artemis fleet slowly ascended, preparing to return to Earth. They had answered a desperate call and had saved millions of lives. Their energy shields glowed faintly, and the fleet left a trail of light across the sky, a reminder of hope and unity. Clara looked up. "They saved us," she said softly. "We survived because humans from another world cared." Ethan nodded. "And we'll never forget. Today proves that humans fight, adapt, and survive no matter the odds." Alex smiled. "We have friends across the stars. We are not alone, and now we rebuild." The city's fires were still burning in some places, but humans were already clearing rubble, restoring shelters, and helping the wounded. Soldiers trained civilians to help with repairs, and families worked together to salvage what they could. Ethan, Clara, and Alex stood together, looking at the horizon. The Kryn were gone, the city was safe, and hope had returned. For the first time in days, they felt peace. "We survived," Ethan said quietly, "and we will survive again if we must." Clara smiled. "Because we never give up," Alex nodded. "Because we fight together." And on Virelia, the people learned something important. Even when all seemed lost, humans could survive, adapt, and triumph. Against overwhelming odds, courage, ingenuity, and unity made them unstoppable. The sky was quiet now. The fires would burn out, the buildings could be rebuilt, and life could return. The humans of Virelia had been saved by their own bravery and by the help of humans from another world. Ethan looked at the stars, thinking of Earth and the fleet that had answered their call. "We begged for help when time ran out," he said softly, "and I saw the response fall from the heavens." Clara touched his shoulder. "We'll rebuild, we'll grow stronger. And we'll be ready if they ever come back." Alex smiled, looking at the survivors in the streets. "Today proves something important. Humans never give up. We fight, we adapt, and we survive, always." The survivors cheered quietly, and children ran freely for the first time in days. Families hugged, soldiers nodded to each other, and the city began its slow recovery. Above, the Artemis fleet disappeared into the distance, leaving Virelia in human hands. The Kryn would think twice before returning, knowing that humans, no matter where they were, would always fight with courage and ingenuity. Ethan, Clara, and Alex stood together, watching the sky. The city was safe, the people were alive, and hope had returned. In the hearts of every human on Virelia, there was a lesson learned. No matter the odds, no matter how dark the skies, humans would rise. They would fight. They would survive. And they would always answer the call to protect life, to defend courage, and to triumph against any enemy. And in that quiet moment, as the wind blew softly through the ruins of the city, the humans of Vyrlia looked up at the stars, and they knew one thing for certain. They were never alone. Hope had come from the heavens, courage had survived, and humanity had proven once again that it could overcome anything.